Okay. What's your name?
My name is Jamal David Walker.
Just totally act normal, okay?
You're asking me to act normal?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Tell me a little about yourself. What are your hobbies, interests, and what do you do for work?
Well, I'll start what I do for work. I am a baker and a cook. So I do that during the week, and I am also an entertainer. I am a DJ, mobile DJ, and a singer. And I play in a couple of different bands. I sing in a couple of different bands. So, what else was it on that question?
Um, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So what else? I am a lover of people. I am a very spiritual person. I consider myself to be very spiritual, though not religious. I used to be religious, but I no longer am. I have recovered from my religiosity. I consider myself to be a Pan-Africanist. You know, I'm concerned about what's going on with people all over the diaspora, who are African, consider themselves to be African. And I study in that area quite a bit. And let's see. Other interests, I love my kids and my wife, and I like spending time with them. I enjoy writing music and producing music, and I do a lot of work in the area of social justice. I have a nonprofit organization that I helped to co-found in 2011 called Creating Communities Beyond Bias, and so we do a lot of work with young people in particular in the community that we live in, and I'm looking to expand that out into the wider community. So yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about how your life was as a child in comparison to how children grow up now?
Wow, that's a big one. I would start off by saying that, well, of course, we didn't have all the technology that we have today, so life was much different. I think that as a child, I know that we spent way more time outside, doing things outside of the house, because there wasn't nothing really going on inside the house of any interest for us as far as, hobbies and activities to do. So we were always outside. I was from that generation that, we had to be told, don't let the street lights catch you outside. If the street lights came on, we were late. But along with that, what that meant is that our parents weren't really concerned about us being out all day unattended. I mean, we pretty much did whatever we wanted to do out there, without getting into any kind of trouble. But, we were not limited to our own neighborhood. We would take our bikes and go into other neighborhoods, sometimes go into whole other cities. I grew up down in the Bay Area and the Peninsula, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Redwood City area. And it wasn't uncommon for us to, either get on our bikes or hop on a bus and go to the next town over and go to the mall or go hang out, and do whatever. So it was a much different upbringing. And of course, the one rule is, don't get caught with the street lights on. And we had a lot of fun. We got to really explore our environment. So that was very different than, I think the way kids grow up today with all the technology and video games and all that stuff. When I was growing up, especially early on, we didn't start getting game consoles until, I'd say early 80s, is when that started coming around. And not everybody had one in their house. It wasn't like, everybody had that, the ability to afford one of those. I know my mom couldn't when I was young. So when we wanted to play video games, we went to the arcade. And again, that was very different because that was a social experience for us. as much as it was playing video games. It was a thing to go do. It was a thing to go to the arcade, go to the mall, and inside of the mall was the arcade. And, so it was as much a social experience as it was playing the video games. So it was very different. What else I want to say about that? Go ahead, tell me the question again.
I said, can you talk about how your life was as a child in comparison to how children grow up now?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess in short, we were much more social. We didn't have nearly as many distractions. We didn't have a 24-hour news cycle like we have today. And one of my favorite comedians said something, and I'm paraphrasing here. I can't remember which comedian it was, but he said TV had some respect back then. They went off the air at a certain time. You know what I mean? We didn't have all the channels that we have today. Cable, when I was a kid, was in its infancy. So, and again, not everybody could afford cable. So we have 4 or 5 different television stations, and that's what we had. And so we weren't so glued into the TV as we are now. TV is like this incredible multimedia experience. You can connect everything to it, and you can do whatever you want. You can watch whatever you want, whenever you want to watch it. We didn't have all that. We couldn't record programs, at the click of a button until, again, like, early 80s when the VCR came into being. That was like a huge, jump in technology for us back then. So that was the change and the growth in technology is probably the biggest, most fundamental change in how we grew up as kids compared to how my kids have grown up. Computers in every household and that sort of thing. I didn't have my first computer until I was grown. And where now the expectation is, every kid to have not only a computer, to work on, but a handheld computer like the one that you're recording me with. So everybody's got smartphones and all that stuff. We didn't have any of that stuff. So.
Tell a story about a relative.
Man, that's tough. Tell a story about a relative. Well, I'll tell you what, the first one that comes to mind, the one that always remains very significant for me, is a story about my little cousin Tracy. And it's a deep story, Tracy, I can't remember how much younger Tracy was than me. He passed away several years ago. He was gunned down in the street. But when we were young, there was a Chuck Norris movie that had come out. And it was actually, I believe it was Chuck Norris's first, solo film. He had been in other films, but this was his first work on his own. It was called Good Guys Wear Black. And I remember when that was in the theaters, and Tracy was really excited to see it, So at this time, I couldn't have been more than about 13, so I can't imagine Tracy being more than about 6 or 7. And Tracy was really excited about going to see that movie. It's Chuck Norris, all the karate and everything, kung fu, and he was excited about it. And this going to see kung fu flicks was like a big part of my growing up, with my cousins and everything. That's what we did on Sundays after Sunday school. It was like, we went to the movies, and oftentimes it was to go see kung fu flicks. Everybody in my family loved Bruce Lee, you know what I mean? And all the characters that surrounded Bruce Lee in those kung fu movies of that time. And so Tracy was really excited to go see Good Guys Wear Black. But he kept messing up the title. And so he would call it Good Guys, We Black. And I was like, no, Tracy, it's Good Guys Wear Black. He's like, no, man, cuz it's Good Guys, We Black. Good Guys, We Black. And it wasn't until years later that I really thought about the significance of him being so insistent about that being the title. And knowing what I know now about post-traumatic stress that black people have suffered throughout hundreds of years of, through all the years of slavery and all the subsequent years of mistreatment and degradation after slavery, that it's embedded at a young age within our consciousness that about how we feel about ourselves, and the messages that we've been told that we're not good. And so even at that tender age, Tracy had already internalized that idea that we weren't good. And so for him, that title, that was a way for him to reverse that thinking. It was a way for him to reverse that thinking. Good guys, we black. Good guys, we black. So yeah, that's an enduring memory that I have.
Who were you closest to when you were young? Like a best friend or a sibling or a relative?
Let's see. Well, I had a couple of buddies in the neighborhood, one of which that I was really close to, like in my teenage years, was a brother by the name of Roy Ford.
Ford?
Ford,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Roy Ford. And he was just a good brother, and we just clicked, we did everything together. And, that was one of the best friendships I think I ever had growing up. And I had a lot of good friends. But that was, during that time, I was around, 15, 16, and, for several years we were pretty tight. And then I moved away from the neighborhood, and we kind of lost contact. But it was a very informative time in my life, of course, being a young teenager, high school age. And we didn't go to the same school, but, he lived like half a block away from me, and we just got tight. And so we did everything together. We partied together, we listened to music together, played dominoes together, just hung out. We're real tight. We performed in plays together. We traveled, got on the bus and go up to San Francisco to go kick it. We did just everything together. And it was one of those kind of friendships where we could be doing absolutely nothing and have a great time just cracking each other up, being stupid, And so I always loved that brother for that. Also, another relationship that was really key for me growing up was my relationship with my cousin Wade. And he's my older cousin. He's older than me by about, 4 or 5 years. And I always looked up to him because he was just super cool, and I wasn't. I was kind of a nerd, growing up. I was a bookworm and a nerd, and had always felt different than a lot of the members of my family. They didn't make me feel different. I just felt different because, so many of them they were cool, and I wasn't. I was kind of awkward and insecure, and I know that they were insecure too in many ways, though I didn't see it that way, but they were cool, and Wade was one of the coolest, and so I always looked up to him as my older cousin. And what I loved about Wade is that he accepted me exactly the way I was and loved to hang out with his little cousin, and I can remember times when he was working at the clubs in San Francisco. This was, more when I was like, I was like 16, 17, and he was already over 21. And he would get me into the clubs, just trying to get me to loosen up and have a good time. He just wanted to see me have a good time. And I remember just being in awe because, these clubs in San Francisco were huge. Some of these clubs had like three levels, and, he was a bouncer at different clubs in the area. And he just did stuff like that for me. I got you, cuz. Come on, man. We're going to go party and have a good time. Um, and again, you know, we could just be kicking it together, hanging out at the crib, and have a good time. And I was good for him too, you know, because like you know, I would talk about how I would write stuff down in the journal, and you know, he was doing the same thing, but he wouldn't let anybody know he was doing it. He was like, dang, because I thought I was the only person that ever did stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I do that too. And, you know, because being all cool like that, you can't let people know that you know, people in the neighborhood, certainly, you know, let them know you're doing stuff like that. So we've always been tight, and we still tight to this day. I don't see him as often as I would like, but we're still tight. Yeah.
If you could talk to one passed on person, who would it be and why?
Mm. My first thought is my grandmother, but what my heart is telling me right now is my baby brother. Yeah. I miss our talks. I miss our talks. Gone way too soon. Um, he was a good dude, and we could talk about just sports, or we could get down and dirty and talk about some really deep stuff. And you know, where I really think about him a lot is when I'm watching college ball. You know, because we both love college ball, in particular football. We talk about a lot and talk about who the prospects are coming out of college, and who we thought was going to make a big splash in the NFL. And so when I'm watching college ball, I instinctively want to call him up and be like, dang, what do you think about so-and-so? What do you think about so-and-so? And so I talk to him anyway about it, you know. But it's not the same as him, you know, sitting right here next to me in the flesh. But I know he's here, you know. He's going on to be with the ancestors, and he's providing power and love to us every day.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.